I still remember the exact sound the bell made when they pushed open the door that afternoon. It wasn't the cheerful ding it usually gave customers. It sounded sharper, almost accusing, like it knew who was stepping inside before I even looked up. For years since I'd last seen my father's face, my mother's tight-lipped disapproval, my brother's quick glance away. 4 years since the night they sat me down at the old oak table in the living room, the one Dad refinished himself back when things still felt solid, and told me I was no longer part of the family. "You've made your choices," Dad had said, voice flat like he was reading a weather report. "We can't carry that weight anymore." My crime? Walking away from the family business, the hardware store that had been in our name for 3 generations, to open my own small restaurant. A place where people came for comfort food, not power tools. They called it selfish, ungrateful, a betrayal. I built this place from nothing. Moi's Kitchen, a modest spot on a quiet street in the old part of town. Wooden tables I sanded myself, the smell of fresh naan and slow-cooked nahari every morning, the hum of the ceiling fan mixing with soft chatter. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Customers became regulars, regulars became friends. I found a kind of peace in the rhythm of chopping onions, hearing another plate of biryani, beta from the aunties who tipped extra because they knew I worked alone most days. That Saturday, the lunch rush had just died down. I was wiping down the counter, the faint scent of cardamom still hanging in the air, when the bell rang. I glanced up and froze. There they were. Dad in his pressed gray shirt, the same one he'd worn to every family gathering. Mom beside him, clutching her purse like a shield. My brother trailing behind, eyes on the floor. They looked older, smaller somehow. The years had carved lines around their mouths, grayed Dad's temples more than I remembered. Dad scanned the room like he was appraising property, then locked eyes with me. "No hello, no hesitation. We need to talk," he said, voice carrying across the empty tables. "In private." My heart thudded once, hard. I set the cloth down slowly, felt the cool wood under my palms. The kitchen door swung behind me as I led them to the small back room where I kept the ledger and extra spices. The air smelled of turmeric and old receipts. Dad didn't sit. He stood straight, hands clasped behind his back like he was still giving orders at the hardware store. "We've come to collect what's ours," he said. 15 lakh. You owe the family that much for everything we invested in you growing up. Education, food, roof over your head. Time to pay it back." I stared at him. The words landed like stones in still water, rippling out disbelief, then something hotter underneath. Mom shifted, eyes darting to the floor. My brother cleared his throat but said nothing. For years of silence. For years of birthdays ignored, Eids without a call, my restaurant opening without a single card or visit. And now this. I felt the old ache rise, the one I'd buried under long hours and quiet pride. But I kept my voice steady, the way I'd learned to when customers complained or suppliers shorted me. "Why now?" I asked quietly. "After all this time?" Dad's jaw tightened. "Because we need it. And because blood is blood. You don't get to erase us and keep everything for yourself." I let the silence stretch between us for a long moment. The small back room felt smaller now, the shelves of spice jars pressing in like silent witnesses. I could hear the faint clatter of a spoon against a plate from the kitchen. Old Mr. Ahmed still eating his usual late lunch, unaware that the past had just walked through my front door. 15 lakh? I repeated softly, not as a question, but to feel the weight of it again. "That's what you decided I owe?" Dad's eyes narrowed, the same way they used to when I was 12 and forgot to lock the storeroom at the hardware shop. "It's not arbitrary, Moise. We gave you everything. School fees when we barely had enough after the flood ruined the first floor of the store. Your college books. The down payment for that scooter you crashed the second month you had it. We never asked for a rupee back. Until now." Mom finally spoke, her voice thinner than I remembered, almost fragile. "We're selling the house, Beta. Your brother's wedding is coming. The groom's family is asking for more than we expected. We thought you would understand." My brother, still silent, shifted his weight. He wouldn't meet my eyes. 4 years ago he'd stood beside Dad at that kitchen table and said nothing while they cut me out. Now he needed money for a wedding I hadn't even been invited to. I felt something twist behind my ribs. Not quite anger. Not quite sorrow. Something older, more tired. I leaned back against the counter, arms folded, and looked at each of them in turn. "You erased me," I said quietly. "Not a phone call on my birthday. Not when I opened this place and worked 18-hour days so it wouldn't close in the first month. Not even when the news ran that little piece about local boy follows his dream. Nothing. For 4 years. And now you walk in here and tell me I owe you 15 lakh because blood is blood. Dad's face hardened. You walked away first. You chose this. He gestured vaguely at the walls, the spice-scented air. Over family. I almost laughed, but it came out as a short, dry breath. I chose to feed people, to build something that didn't depend on guilt or obligation. You chose to punish me for it. Mom's fingers tightened on her purse strap until the leather creaked. We were hurt, Moise. You left without discussion. You didn't even try to compromise. I tried for years, I said. Every dinner where you talked about how the store would be mine one day, how I'd carry the name forward. Every time I said I wanted something different and you looked at me like I'd insulted the family honor. I didn't leave without discussion. I left because the discussion was always the same, your way or nothing. The room went quiet again except for the low hum of the refrigerator in the corner. Dad exhaled through his nose, the sound sharp. So that's your answer? He asked. You won't help. I looked at him, really looked. The man who taught me how to hammer a nail straight, how to read a tape measure, how to stand behind my word. The same man who later taught me that love could be conditional. I'll help, I said slowly. But not the way you think. I let those last words hang in the air a second longer, then stepped past them toward the doorway that led back to the dining area. Wait here, I said. Not cold, not angry, just calm. I walked to the front counter, pulled the small metal cash box from under the register, the one I kept for emergencies and tips, and counted out what was inside. Not 15 lakh, not even close, but enough. When I returned, I set the envelope on the small table between us. Plain white, sealed. That's 1,80,000, I told them. Every extra rupee customers have left over the last 6 months because they said the food reminded them of home. Because an auntie told me her son works abroad and never calls. But she feels less alone here. Because a student said my chai tastes like his grandmother's. That money isn't mine to hoard. It's gratitude. Take it. Use it for the wedding. But don't come back asking for more. Dad stared at the envelope like it might bite him. Mom's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. My brother finally looked up, really looked, and for the first time in years I saw something flicker there. Shame, maybe, or recognition. You think this is enough? Dad asked, voice lower now. No, I said, but it's what I can give without feeling like I'm buying back a place at your table. I stopped needing that a long time ago. Mom reached out then, her hand trembling just a little, and touched my wrist. Her fingers were cooler than I expected. Thinner. We were wrong, she whispered. Not about everything, but about cutting you out. We were scared. Of change. Of losing the life we knew. I didn't pull away, but I didn't hold on either. I let her hand rest there a moment, then gently stepped back. I know, I said, and I forgive you for that fear. But forgiveness doesn't mean I have to let you rewrite the rules again. Dad picked up the envelope slowly, like it weighed more than paper and notes. He didn't open it. Just nodded once, short, sharp, the way he used to when a job was finished. We'll go, he said. They turned toward the door. My brother paused at the threshold, glanced back. Congratulations on the place, bye, he said quietly. It smells like home. The bell dinged again as they left. Soft this time, almost gentle. I stood there until the sound faded, until the street noise filtered back in. A motorbike revving, children laughing somewhere down the lane, the call of a fruit vendor, life moving on. Later that evening, after I closed up, I sat at one of the empty tables with a cup of chai that had gone lukewarm. The overhead light buzzed faintly. I thought about the old oak table back at the house I grew up in, the one I'd never sit at again. And I realized something simple. Family isn't always the people who share your blood. Sometimes it's the ones who show up hungry and leave full. Sometimes it's the quiet you make for yourself when the loud voices finally walk away. I still love them. I always will. But love doesn't mean permission to take what isn't offered freely. I wiped the table one last time, turned off the lights, and locked the door behind me. The night air smelled of rain coming and jasmine from the neighbor's wall. And for the first time in 4 years, the silence didn't hurt. This is broken trust stories. If someone erased you, then came back asking for more than you could give, would you have handed them the envelope? Or would you have closed the door for good? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if this story touched something in you, hit that subscribe button. There are more voices waiting to be heard.